Hi, I'm going to start a demonstration on a theme of donuts. And I saw a painting in a hotel a couple of years ago, and it was like a fine art print, and it had these shapes on it. And I thought, Fruit Loops, donuts, I'm not sure what it is. But I thought that would be a great demonstration for my students. So I held on to that photo. And here we go. I've never done it before. Go ahead and start wetting down the Arches 140 paper that I have. And I marked the page with circles, and it's 4 inches by 4 inches each square that they sit in. And we just want to dampen up that paper with clear water. Because we're going to experiment with some bleeding with paint. I'm going to let that sit for a few minutes. It is a little dry on this side, so make sure I got it nice and covered. And I'm using a Robert Simmons, it looks like a number 8 that I have here. It's a 10, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. And I had a puddle of a brilliant blue on my palette that I used the other day. So I'm going to go ahead and take that blue and rehydrate it. And you can use any color you want. The purpose of this exercise is to experiment. And I'm sure my camera doesn't show the palette as well as my painting, but you'll get an idea of what I'm doing in a second. I'd like to know what I'm doing because I've never done this. So it's kind of fun. I think I'll take something brighter like Bela. Let that run in wet into wet. And you want this right. Let's see what our things would be. Now I think I'm going to get a bright yellow. And I've got a big blob of cadmium yellow on my brush. I think I'll leave it there. I like that little white spot. So while that's setting up, I think I'm going to do one more thing, and that's put a little bit of table salt on it. Maybe that could represent the sugar. Okay, and now while that's drying, I'm going to go off to another donut. Again, the purpose of this is to help you experiment and see what your colors are going to do for you as they blend on water. It's wet into wet. And I'm just kind of not staying within the line so much. I want it to bleed out a little bit. And you can get creative on this and put sugar or draw frosting on it. It doesn't matter. It's just to have fun. And now I'm going to go ahead and try another. A permanent rose or quinacridone rose. That's hot pink. I'm going to drop that in. We need it brighter. And I like the way it's leaching out. And it's just taking the path of the water. And now I'm going to take that a lemon yellow, I think. I'll use the yellow. I didn't want anything as chalky as the cadmium yellow, but I'm taking the lemon. And drop it into the paint. Don't forget to leave white. Experiment. And I'm tipping my board to let the colors blend on their own. And then I've got a good saturation of this paint on my brush straight from the palette. This is a lot of fun. Kind of letting them fade out. Darken it over here a tiny bit more. And I think that Doughnuts had it. Now I'll clean out my brush. And I have a different type of a salt. It's a sea salt somebody gave me. So I thought, well, what the heck? I'll give it a shot and see what it'll do. Like big chunks. So we'll see if that works or not. Now this next donut, I drew some lines on it, like frosting. And then I'll start out with that bright lemon yellow that I had. Oh, I forgot to wet the paper. All right. Well, you know what? I'll leave it alone. For this moment, I'm going to go ahead and let it be just yellow stripes. Yellow frosting. I have absolutely no recipe for what I'm doing. Pardon the pun. This is just totally kind of having fun. Okay, it looks good. And I'll let that dry and move on to the next one. As you can see, the salt over here on donut number 1 is now taking an interesting path and absorbing, and this one isn't quite doing it yet, but it should have a different kind of a look, just the size of the salt. Let's see, with this donut, and by the way, I'm being inspired by a page of donuts that I found on the web. So I like this one with the blue, looks like pieces of frosting. I'm going to take a brush and drop in the blue frosting, and this time I'm not going to wet the paper down yet. Curls. And think three dimensions too, because if it were a donut, it would be round in form, so the curls are taking the curvature of the donut. I'm gonna dry that. And try not to dry the ones down here, because I will, as with salt, you don't want it to dry at all. You want the salt to take it, to absorb the paint that's inside. But if, say, for instance, you got to the point where you wanted to stop, then you can stop it at that point. Okay, I think that this is still absorbing. It didn't dry this, but at least I got those dried out. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and wet this with clear water because I'm going to do a little wet to wet on top of the yellow. And I don't want to do any scrubbing. I'm just laying the water on top of it and let the water float over the yellow. Set up a few minutes. Sure, I've got it covered. And now to decide what one am I going to put in the middle. I think I will use orange. And I have a cadmium orange, and I'm going to mix it a little bit of quinacridone rose in it. And now I've got cat hair. That is nice. That's kind of fun. I'm going to move away to the side here. And it's easier for my arm to get into from that angle. This is something that you can do, by the way. This is called bridging, and I've got one arm over the other. Unless I demonstrate this, I've never seen a teaching. And then a little bit of frosting on the side. And that's one fascinating donut. All right, what more do I want to do to that? I might put a little bit more yellow in it. Just to brighten it up. It looks like it's got. What the heck? Okay, striped yellow donut. Now the blue one, I'm going to go ahead and wet it. Same thing. Remember that permanent colors are less likely to bleed out. And yet, even though bright Windsor blue is a permanent color, it is still lifting up. All right, now what do I want to do with this one? I think something warm on it would be nice. We've got 3 more, so I'm making a decision here. Excuse me. I think I will take rose. Or better yet, purple. And let the water play with the paint. And it's floating. I'm using Windsor Violet. And those that know me know that I probably use more Windsor Violet per pound than most people on the planet. Okay, well that's looking kind of cool. But I'm really sorry I missed the blue that's underneath there. So maybe I could lift it up a little bit. So I'm going to try taking a smaller brush. See if I can take off. Yeah, it's not good. A little. So if you're doing a watercolor painting and you wanted to recover the color that you lost, you can always add in something. Like acrylic, you could go colored pencil. There's no reason it has to be pure watercolor. I'm going to drop some salt into this one. Just down the middle. And the last, I would continue on with the rest of these. What you could do on this would be adding a little bit of masking fluid, and I think I'll do that just real fast. You can always shut off the video, but you have an idea of what I'm doing. And I'm going to take an old watercolor brush and go into the masking fluid. And make sure your brush is giving you what you're looking for in terms of the line. These are those little candies that are elongated. It reminds me of Wayne Thiebaud. You know Wayne Thiebaud is a famous California painter. He's probably 90 years old now, if not older. He's still painting. Cookies, and pies, all sorts of fun things. I'll dry this down. Masking fluid has to be very, very dry before you add anything to it. And I'm going to go ahead and do the same method this time. Go right on over the sprinkles. Settle some water on it. And this time I'm going to go ahead and use green. And the color I'm using is phthalo green. And I'm picking up some of the pink off my palette. Started here. And so on, you can get as creative as you want with this. Just have fun with it. I think that's the most important part. And see what combinations of colors you can come up with. And see, now you can see how my candies are resisting the color that I put on. The wetter the surface, the less intensity you're going to get from your colors. So you may want to wait until it's not quite so flowy, because right now it's really wet. Take a paper towel and soak that up. I want that green to be nice and bright. And lastly, there's no reason why you couldn't add shadow to these to give them a three-dimensional form if you chose to. And so I'm going to select this one, almost dry. I don't think I'll be able to do that. It's just a little bit wet still. But you could also drop in a shadow. And that would make the shadows consistent through all of the painting. And so you'd have a shadow down here. So if you casting light, I think that looks about right. And for that shadow, I'm taking Windsor Violet, and I'm going to also put in a little bit of blue, which is ultramarine blue, Windsor Violet, and a tiny, tiny drop of Payne's Gray. And there you go. Now it's a little bit more three-dimensional. And here in the hole is the donut. Put some shadow. And that's it for my demonstration. So I hope you have fun with this, and learn how to blend paint.